Okay, everybody, last lesson in our unit here on industrialization immigration. Today we're going to talk about some of the fun stuff that's going on in the end of the 1800s and beginning of the 1900s. We're going to take a look at American leisure today. So our objectives and standards are to analyze how leisure has changed and to explain how Americans spent their free time. And take a moment there to read the standards if you would, please. Desired result. Remember to include this in your weekly summary. What activities, were Americans participating in for leisure at the beginning of the 1900s? Vocabulary. We have Aztec School. Aztec School is an American art style that focused on urban life and working conditions. And we also have Rural Free Delivery, or RFD, a system that brought packages directly to every home. So time for fun. During the early 1900s, and at the end of the 1800s for that matter, many Americans began to explore new leisure activities and consuming a lot of goods. These activities were different from region to region across the United States, but generally, Americans were looking to escape the busy, congested life of cities for relaxation. So different types of parks. Cities are going to look for ways to fill the needs of residents. Places like Chicago and New York City are going to set aside green spaces for enjoyment. We'll begin to see the rise of small playgrounds and playing fields, which were set up in neighborhoods, and also amusement parks featuring roller coasters and Ferris wheels, which were kind of new, began to arrive outside of cities. Coney Island was established in 1884, and also we have the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893. Active Americans. Bicycles. Bicycles are going to become very popular during this time, and allowed men, and eventually women, to enjoy some leisure. Americans are also going to begin to enjoy the sport of tennis, which will become popular, and new snacks and drinks are going to keep Americans energized. Take a second here, think about maybe there's a famous candy bar that you can think of that Americans might have been enjoying around 1900. And that would be Hershey's chocolate. We'll begin to see Hershey's chocolate kind of pop around 1900. People will begin enjoying that. And then maybe a popular soft drink still around today that a lot of people like to drink in 1886. That would be Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola will also be becoming created around the same time as well. Seeing sports. During the early 1900s, sports were not just for playing, but for watching as well. Americans are going to become avid fans of baseball and boxing, and those who could not afford to attend the events will find themselves listening in on barbershops or hotel lobbies on radios or things like that. The boom for baseball. There were new rules that transformed baseball into a professional sport. Baseball had been around since about 1845 when Alexander Alec Joy Cartwright Jr. Formed a club based off the ideas of the English sport called rounders. The National League for Baseball will be established in 1876. The American League for Baseball will be established in 1900. Now, discriminated against from playing, African Americans are going to form their own leagues. They're going to form the National Negro League and the Negro American League. Again, like we said, we talk about in live class, sometimes things aren't the proper names that we use today, but those were the names that they used back then. And professional baseball had published rules, a standard-sized diamond, and also a schedule. So we'll begin to see the rise of organized Major League Baseball at this time. New for newspapers. Literacy rates and education are going to help expand cultural activities for Americans. Mass entertainment, such as motion pictures, like movies. Not so much with talking, but silent movies will be expanding with new media technology. New production methods will also allow for thousands of newspapers, magazines, and books. Now, one of the reasons for this is sensational headlines. Think about when you go to the grocery store, you see the supermarket tabloids, right? Giant worm crushes small city. I don't know. Something like that. But even though you know it might be fake, it kind of grabs your attention, and you might want to read that article for a second. So these sensational headlines are going to come about in the late 1800s, early 1900s to attract readers to buy them. And one of the ones, or two of the people who were really battling at this time are John Pulitzer, his picture up here, and William Randolph Hearst, who are going to battle for sales in newspapers. Art and the Ashcan School. There was at least one art gallery in American cities by 1900, and many artists are going to begin to use realism to portray life as it really was. Thomas Copperthwaite Eskins was an artist who used this style and photography to express the real daily struggles of life for people enjoying life in reality. Now, a student of his, Robert Henry, led the Ashcan School. The Ashcan School showed the reality of city life and working conditions. Now, Henry and the Ashcan School will soon face competition from European artists and what will become known as the abstract movement, but again, this was a pretty popular art movement in the United States. Fascinating fiction. Some scholars believe that literature should uplift the literary taste of Americans. So fiction should focus on crime tales and Western adventures, again, trying to drag people in. And most Americans are going to enjoy these light fiction stories, known as dime novels, because you basically pay 10 cents for a book. Imagine paying 10 cents for a book today. I think that's a pretty good price. But these dime novels are going to be very popular. Now, others are going to want a more realistic portrayal of American life, which included authors such as Jack London and Stephen Crane. Stephen Crane's down here, that's Jack London there. Samuel Langhorne Clemens, better known as Mark Twain, wrote books that are part of classic American literature, such as maybe you've heard of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn or The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. So again, all these new books are going to come about and attract more reading as well. Shopping surprises. The way Americans shopped also changed at the beginning of the 20th century. Shopping centers are going to begin to appear, with the first one in Cleveland, Ohio in 1890, and many of these are going to provide shopping experiences along with music. Think when you go to Kohl's in the mall, you're shopping around, they play music typically, right? So this is going to add a lot of elements as well. We'll also see the rise of department stores with multiple levels of shopping. Places like Sears, J.C. Penney, Macy's, all these big stores that many of them are still around today, with multiple levels of shopping, are going to begin to appear around the late 1800s, early 1900s. We'll also see some chain stores begin to pop up. Chain stores are retail stores that offer the same merchandise under the same ownership. Because of this, they're able to sell goods for far less by buying in large quantities. Think of like Kohl's. If you go to a Kohl's in Pittsburgh, and then you go to a Kohl's in Philadelphia, chances are you're going to see the same things, the same type of clothing. Might not have everything the same, but typically you're going to see the same type of clothing. So that's a chain store. Advertising spending will also increase as well to push certain products. I mentioned earlier about Sears. Catalogs from Montgomery Ward and Sears Roebuck are going to bring shopping to small towns. So if you didn't live in the big city like New York or Chicago, maybe you couldn't get to Sears or Macy's. Well, not a problem. Sears and Macy's would send their catalog to you. They would send it out to the farmers in Kansas or in Iowa, and then these Americans could then order the same things that were in the stores in the cities, excuse me, and have them sent to their homes. So 10 million Americans are going to be shopping by mail by 1910. And in 1896, the United States Post Office will also boost sales by introducing what is called rural free delivery, so delivering packages to people's homes as well. Okay, so our closure. So a lot of information there, but what activities were Americans participating in for leisure at the beginning of the 1900s? Think about some of the athletics they're participating in, sports, shopping, art, and reading, and all those different things, and that will help you answer your question, okay? Hope you have a great rest of your day or night. Be sure to try your best in the questions that follow. Include this in the weekly summary, and talk to you all soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.